The teacher looked at 13-year-old Bruce and said it calmly, almost absent-mindedly, as if reading weather off a window. "You try, but nothing special will come from you." The sentence didn't shout. That was what made it cut deeper. It landed like a decision already signed. The training room in Hong Kong was small and old, wedged between concrete walls that held heat the way a fist holds a coin. The wooden floor complained under every shift of weight. The air was wet and heavy, thick with sweat, dust, and the sour ghost of mats that had dried 1,000 times and never truly cleaned. A ceiling fan groaned in slow circles, pushing warm air from one corner to the next without relief. Along the walls, teenagers stood in a loose line, shoulders slick, hands wiping palms on pants, eyes dropping whenever the teacher's gaze passed. Someone's knuckles were scraped raw. Someone else kept rubbing a bruised forearm like it might erase itself. Bruce was the smallest in the room, thin wrists, narrow shoulders, legs still more wire than muscle. His uniform hung on him the way borrowed clothes hang on a younger brother. He didn't look like a fighter. Not yet. He didn't cry. He didn't protest. The reaction stayed trapped behind his ribs. He noticed everything instead. The teacher's tone, flat, not cruel. The faint irritation in the way he exhaled, as if Bruce were a problem that refused to solve itself. The teacher's eyes sliding past him, already moving on to the next body, the next proof. Bruce's shoulders tightened without his permission. His fingers curled until the nails bit skin. His mouth went dry, not from thirst, but from the sudden blank shame that fills space where anger should be. It was worse than being hit, because there was nothing to swing at. "Yes, sir," Bruce managed. The words came out steady, and that steadiness felt like a lie. The pause after the verdict stretched too long. Even the fan's hum seemed to hesitate, then continue, indifferent. The teacher turned and pointed at another boy, older, broader, with a chest already carrying confidence. "You," he said. "Again. Clean. Fast." The older boy stepped forward. The floor creaked under him like it recognized his weight. The teacher's voice warmed by 1/2 degree as he corrected his stance, the kind of attention Bruce craved and hated himself for craving. A quiet smile flickered at the edge of the line, quick, cruel in its speed. Another boy looked away, pretending not to enjoy it, which was its own kind of enjoyment. Social pressure didn't need words. It only needed witnesses. Bruce shifted his feet and caught his reflection in the long mirror, a thin frame, hair damp at the temples, eyes too tense for a child. For a second he didn't see himself. He saw an unfinished shape, something that could be dismissed with one sentence. The teacher's voice returned, short and final. "You're forcing it. You don't have it." Bruce swallowed. The sound felt loud in the quiet. "Yes, sir," he repeated softer. But inside, the emptiness didn't stay empty. It turned dense, like wet clay. He didn't know how to fight the teacher's judgment, not yet. He only knew the terrifying logic behind it. If the man was right, then every bruise, every late night, every ounce of effort meant nothing. And Bruce, standing there with his palms still clenched, felt something else take shape beneath the shame, small, stubborn, and dangerously alive. That night, Bruce didn't go home proud of anything. He went home quiet, too quiet for a boy who was supposed to learn discipline. His father hadn't sent him to the old hall because he saw talent. He sent him because the streets were starting to write Bruce's story for him. Quick temper, quick fists, a sharp tongue in alleys where older boys ruled by size. The training was meant to sand down the edges before the police, or worse, did it first. Bruce understood that. What he couldn't swallow was the other thing, the suspicion in his father's eyes whenever neighbors mentioned trouble. Not anger, disappointment, the kind that sits at the dinner table without raising its voice. So Bruce trained with a hunger that didn't look noble. It looked desperate. He was physically weaker than the boys who joked loudest. He heard it in small ways. Too nervous, too emotional. You move like you're thinking and not fighting." The words weren't shouted. They were tossed aside like scraps. Instead of leaving with the others, Bruce stayed after class while the fan kept grinding and the room slowly emptied. He repeated the basics until his calves trembled. He worked the same turn of the hip until his wrists burned and the skin along his knuckles felt thin. He went home with soreness that didn't earn applause. The teacher watched only what was in front of him now. He wasn't a villain, and that made him more frightening. He was a practitioner. He trusted what had survived in 100 other bodies. If a boy looked small, he assumed small outcomes. If a technique didn't land clean, he concluded it wouldn't land under pressure. Experience had made his judgments efficient. "Study harder," the teacher told Bruce one afternoon, not unkindly. "Or do acting, something without constant physical contest." Acting. The word struck Bruce like a mockery because it was true. He did love movement, timing, expression. It sounded like being assigned a softer lane. A stronger student stepped onto the floor and blew through a simple drill with speed and noise, muscles doing the work his mind refused. His foot placement was sloppy. His balance floated high. Bruce saw it instantly, the tiny hinge where it could fail, because Bruce's survival depended on noticing hinges. The teacher didn't comment. He praised the force. "Good," he said. "That's power." Bruce felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not jealousy. Clarity. "They aren't measuring what I can become," he realized. "They're measuring what I look like today." Behind him, 2 boys murmured, half laughing. "He'll never be that." "Teacher already said it." The words slid under Bruce's skin, not because they were new, but because they echoed the verdict. Bruce didn't turn around. He watched the drill again, eyes tracking the moment the big student's heel lifted too early, the fraction of time his center drifted forward, a mistake hidden under strength. The teacher stepped close to Bruce and spoke in that same flat, final tone. "You can keep trying, but don't confuse effort with gift." Bruce's throat tightened. He could have nodded and disappeared. Instead, he bowed, slower than usual, and said the smallest thing he'd ever dared to say to an adult who believed he was saving him from false hope. "Sir," Bruce said, voice low, controlled, "what if the gift is not what you're looking for?" The line of students went still, as if the air had thickened again. Someone inhaled sharply, expecting punishment. The teacher didn't answer right away. His eyes held Bruce for an extra beat. No warmth, no anger, just appraisal. Bruce felt his heartbeat in his fingers. If he changed nothing, the man would be right. That was the terror. And in that terror, a new thought appeared. Quiet, almost dangerous in its simplicity. Maybe the path wasn't to become like the others. Maybe it was to stop asking for permission to be different. Weeks passed, then months, measured not by dates, but by how empty the hall became when Bruce finally began to train. Some mornings he arrived before sunrise, when the city outside still yawned and the concrete held the night's cool. Other days, he stayed after everyone left, when the fan clicked off and shadows pooled along the walls. One lamp above the mirror remained on, throwing his reflection back at him in fragments, an arm here, a shoulder there, never a full, forgiving picture. The room sounded different when he was alone. Each strike against the bag echoed too long. Each step landed loud on the wood, exposing imbalance. There was nowhere for mistakes to hide. Bruce trained more than the others, but not the way he was taught. He began to stop after every movement. He'd step, freeze, and feel where his weight settled. He'd turn a punch halfway and undo it, asking why his shoulder tightened first, why his heel lifted when it shouldn't. He adjusted angles by inches, slowed tempo until it felt almost wrong, then sped it up again. It wasn't rebellion. It was investigation. The teacher's sentence stayed with him, not as an insult, but as a problem demanding a solution. Nothing special. Bruce tested that idea against his own body over and over. He noticed patterns others ignored. The strongest boys burned out first, their breathing turning rough while their confidence stayed loud. Their attacks were wide, announced by muscle before intention. They relied on form the way a crutch relies on the ground, solid until it isn't. Bruce's strength was never going to arrive on schedule. That truth stopped frightening him. In its place came something colder and steadier. If I can't be stronger, he thought one night, sweat dripping off his chin, I'll be earlier. Earlier in distance, earlier in timing, earlier in understanding. During a paired drill days later, he tried it. Not boldly, almost apologetically. When a larger student drove in with a straight strike, Bruce didn't brace to block. His front knee stayed soft. His wrist relaxed instead of locking. He shifted his foot just enough to the side and guided the incoming arm past his ribs with a small, precise turn. No force. No clash. The other boy's rhythm broke. His weight slipped forward, balance stolen by an absence he hadn't planned for. He stopped, blinking, surprised more than hurt. "What was that?" the boy asked, half laughing, half wary. "I didn't rush," Bruce said. He sounded surprised by his own calm. They went again, and again. Each time Bruce changed less than expected, distance instead of power, timing instead of resistance. The results stacked quietly. By the end of the round, the larger boy stepped back, breathing hard. Bruce wasn't triumphant. He was focused, listening to the feedback in his bones. From the edge of the room, the teacher had watched. He said nothing, no correction, no praise. His silence pressed heavier than his earlier judgment. Other students noticed. Their glances lingered. Not admiration yet, but a cautious respect, the kind reserved for things that don't fit easy categories. That evening, as Bruce wiped down the mat alone, the mirror caught him again. Same thin frame, same narrow shoulders. But his eyes were different now. The teacher's words no longer echoed like a sentence. They had become friction. And friction, Bruce was learning, could start a fire without anyone's permission. The day of the progress check arrived like a quiet dare. The old hall was fuller than usual. The teacher stood near the mirror with 2 senior students flanking him, and beside them, a visitor, an older instructor with a neat collar and eyes that didn't blink often. The fan churned the humid air, stirring the smell of sweat and wood polish into something metallic. Pairs rotated through short sparring rounds. Quick bows, quick contact, quick judgments. When Bruce's name was called, the room thinned into a ring without anyone being told to move. He stepped onto the floor and felt his heartbeat climb into his throat. His mouth went dry. His palms wanted to sweat, but they stayed strangely cool. Across from him stood a bigger opponent, broad shoulders, thick forearms, the kind of body that made the teacher's earlier verdict seem inevitable. The assignment felt pointed, almost ceremonial. "Let's see what nothing special looks like under pressure." Bruce bowed. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at the space between them, distance, timing, the invisible line where a decision becomes contact. The larger boy attacked the way strong boys are taught to attack, direct, committed, confident. His front foot stamped. His fist came straight for the torso, shoulders driving behind it, power packed into a simple path. Bruce didn't retreat far. He didn't meet force with force. His knee stayed soft, not braced. He made a short step off the line, barely more than a slide, and entered earlier than the other boy expected. The change was small. The effect was immediate. Bruce's hand didn't block. It redirected at the moment of entry, a light turn at the wrist that shifted the punch past his ribs. In the same breath, Bruce's body moved in, close enough that the big boy's power had nowhere to unfold. Bruce delivered one compact contact to the solar plexus, not a dramatic blow, a precise push and strike timed to the opponent's exhale. Air left the bigger boy in a sharp, involuntary burst. His posture faltered, not from pain, but from sudden loss of control. His shoulders dipped, his feet scrambled for a base that wasn't there. The hall went silent. Even the fan seemed louder, grinding its slow circle over an audience that had stopped breathing. The larger students stared at Bruce as if the floor had betrayed him. Bruce stepped back at once. No follow-up, no flourish. Hands open, expression unreadable, as if returning something borrowed. The visitor instructor glanced at the teacher. The teacher's face didn't soften, but his eyes changed. For the first time, they didn't pass over Bruce. They held him. "You're not strong," the teacher said finally. His voice was the same flat tone as months ago. No apology, no warmth. Then he added with a different weight, "But you think." It wasn't praise. It was recognition. In this room, that mattered more. Bruce felt the words settle inside him, and to his surprise, they didn't sting. They clicked into place like a tool finding its correct notch. After the round, the teacher spoke again, quieter. "Come earlier tomorrow. Train separately." A senior student, one who used to smirk, hesitated, then stepped closer, eyes cautious. "Show me what you did," he muttered, as if asking cost him pride. Bruce looked at the mat, then at his own hands. The old verdict floated up, nothing special, and slid away like dust in a fan's draft. It had become fuel. He nodded once. "Stand here," he said, voice calm, and for the first time the room listened to him the way it listened to the teacher.